trillion, trillion, million, billion, 400 billion suns, billion, trillion, billion, trillions of orbiting snowballs, billion, trillions, million, billion, millions, billions, million, billion, 4 billion-year-old tree. Tens of billions. I have trillions, billions, trillions, billions, trillion, millions, millions, billion years, 100 million. It took nature hundreds of millions of years to evolve a bacterium, and billions of years to make a grasshopper. Billions, trillion, billion kilometers from the sun. Saturn 1.5 billion, Uranus 3 billion, and Neptune 4.5 billion kilometers. Billions, billion other galaxies, each of which contains something like 100 billion, tens of billions of years in the far future. Billion of them. Millions or billions, billions of G's. Billions, tens of millions of degrees. Billions, quadrillion, billions, 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 million, millions, billions, trillion,
All right, so we are live with 10 Hole Watchers and back with Frederick from Otis Kratom. So what's going on, Frederick?
That's a lot of billions of miles.
A few trillions in there too.
Yeah, they got to be up to a bajillion by now.
Yeah, I didn't make that.
Yeah, wasn't that from Rob? That was Rob Skiba, wasn't it?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know who did it. It might have been. I pulled that down years ago, and I just had it. And one day I was looking through my library, and I was like, that would make a great introduction. So I don't know who made it, but I found it very enjoyable. So, so what's new with you? Anything, Frederick?
Oh, nothing. Just I'm on a day 8 of a 10-day fast, so.
A 10-day fast.
Yeah.
Man. So what do you just have water on those days or what?
Yeah, or tea, stuff like that.
So no food for 10 days.
Right. So I used to be on a keto diet for probably 5 years or so. And then over the pandemic, I kind of slipped for like 18 months. Was eating shit tons of sugar. And I decided I needed. The only way to transition me off of sugar is to fast for about 10 days, and then quit the sugar.
Sorry about the mic, guys. I forgot I had it sitting on the ground. Thanks for letting me know, Mr. Nick. Man, I have never fasted in my life ever, and that is on my list of things to do. I don't think I've ever went a day without eating, so I couldn't even fathom 10 days. Like that's gotta be crazy. So do you lose a lot of weight over 10 days?
I lost 10 pounds in 7 days. So, but first 3 days, I probably lost about 7. And most of it's water weight,
Now I've heard people say that like there's no way to make your body healthier. There's no better way to make your body like it repairs itself on a fast, like things that are
Right.
damaged. And I'm gonna have to do that. I think you just motivated me. I've never
They call
tried to
that
do it.
they call that autophagy. And I also do intermittent fasting every day. I've been doing that for years. So
Do
I only eat like during an 8-hour window.
So I don't eat for typically. So years ago, I got turned on to 12 hours of fasting, right? Like I'd go from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. where I wouldn't eat. And I'm not as strict about it now, but it is basically a general rule for me. So I usually don't eat after 8. Rarely do I. And like I used to be super strict about it, but now it's just I'm like moderately strict about it. But it's for the most part a habit. But now your fast, is it religious or is it medicinal? Like or both?
It's for me mostly. I just want to get off the sugar because I'm a sugar fiend. So, and I can't transition from, totally overloading on sugar to the proteins and fats. So I have to stick a fast in between,
It's like something you regularly have to do to get off sugar. Like basically you end up slipping right back onto it or.
Well, hopefully I go. I mean, last time I was on a keto for probably 5 years until the pandemic hit, and then I slipped. Because at first everybody was terrified during the pandemic, I think, and everybody's staying at home, and what do you got to do but eat? So, but I mean, I don't do it often. So,
yeah, now. Some people say you're sharper. Like your senses are heightened, like you could hear like
I'm not sure about that.
You don't find your mental acuity like you're less foggy or no?
What I find is that when I'm totally on sugars, I always feel like I want to compare the two. When I'm on sugars, what happens is I'm kind of an anxious person anyways, and I always feel like I'm just on the edge of flying off the handle and just getting irritable with somebody. But when I'm running off ketones, I'm a lot more calmer. So I don't feel like so on edge all the time. No.
But you don't say, so some people had said they felt sharp, like mentally sharper, like a sharper focus, like they didn't, all their brain fog was gone. I'm just curious, same for you, about the same mental acuity?
Yeah, it's about the same, other than, the anxiety. I think that probably brings some interference with my mental acuity, but, I don't really feel much of that. So, and I also feel that when you're running off fats, ketones, it's a lot cleaner burning fuel, I think, and a lot more, there's no ups and downs of energy. It's just a steady amount of energy that I always have. So.
Yeah. Interesting. I'm going to have to do that. It's something I've thought about doing, but yeah, I think you just motivated me to do it. I'm going to do it.
If you do it for more than 3 days, once you get past the third or fourth day-ish, then you have no appetite really. I mean, it's just, I don't know, this time, day 2 and 3 were really bad. I felt like I had the flu, but that's your body detoxing. And then after that it subsides, and it's like, I prepared a meal of chicken for my girlfriend last night and had really no desire to eat any of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I imagine that changes by 10 days though, right? By the 10th day, are you starving? I mean, you have to be.
No, I mean, I'm thinking I might go 15, but I'm definitely doing 10. So, but I mean, eventually you can't do it forever, but I guess it depends on how much fat you have on your body, So as long as you have fat stores on your body, then you could probably go for, a month. I know people that have gone longer than a month.
Wow. Yeah. All right. That's something I'm gonna have to look. I'm gonna try that. I don't know. Maybe I'll go for a 3-day at first. Like 3 days. I think 3 days would be devastating for me.
Yeah. Well, I would try to get past 3 because, like I said, the third day is really when, I don't know. It seems like no matter what you do, drugs or food or whatever, it takes 72 days for that to get out of your body, and then you're in a different state. You know.
Huh. I was just looking at breatharianism. Interesting. Claimed ability for a person to live without consuming food. I had not heard about that. Interesting.
I haven't either.
No. So let me do this. As always, look, I love it when there's 3 or 4 people in here because
yeah, I like that too.
I was never good at monologuing, right? So my whole thing was that this is like a round table. So if someone wants to jump in, line's open. It's open. We need someone with a deep voice though, like a deep old.
Yeah.
We need
I've only had this is only my second online, exposure to the world broadcast ever. So, there's still a little bit of nervousness, I guess.
Yeah, it takes some getting used to. I'm still not used to it. I'm like, I have to force myself to do this every day, right? Like every day before I do it, I'm like, I don't want to do this, but I know that sounds weird. But I'm like, once I'm talking about it, I like it, right? Like I enjoy talking about it. My only fear is that I just can't come up with conversation on the fly, right? And I don't have time.
Yeah.
I just don't have time to write something out during the day. I don't have time. I wish I did, but I've got an 8 to 5 job, and on my days off. So in the evenings, I either do this or I do jujitsu. It's one or the other. So, but I may have to take a day or 2 off just to line up content. We'll see. I did share the channel if someone wants to jump in.
Yeah, and other than the fast, I still have about 5 beehives to assemble and still put in place, and all the bees, 50 packages of bees are being delivered to me in the middle of April. So
all right.
I'm feeling the crunch there.
So we have Greg back. Good to see you again, brother. How are you? No audio. And North.
There we go. I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Good. I'm making a party up in here, man. We're gonna get lit. So North, I haven't heard you yet. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask you, are any of you guys familiar with iridology?
I just looked it up when you type that in. The study of patterns of colors of the iris of the eye to determine information about a patient's overall health.
Yeah, so, anything that happens to your body, whether it be your organs, your bones, whatever happens to you, right, throughout your life, there's a record of it in your eyes. And so, a lot of people go to the ear, nose, and throat doctor. They don't go to an iridologist. So one of the things that stuck out to me in my studies years ago, and I've brought this up many times in the flat earth community, is that there's only really 3 colors of eyes. It's blue, you have brown, and you have green, and you have many shades of each of those, right? So you have your bluish gray, which some people would say gray. But I want you to think about that, the blue, the green, and the brown. So when we look up, the sky is blue. When we look down, the earth is brown, and everything in between is green, right? Isn't that crazy?
That is very interesting. Yeah. That is. I'm looking at some charts at the same time. Yeah, there's actually a lot of charts on this on Google right now. I'm ignorant about it. I don't know anything about it, so I don't know what you can tell from that. I don't know what. I started looking when you typed it in, but I need time to figure it out. You still there? You still with us? I think we lost him. His audio cut out or something.
Yeah, I'm here. So the first time I had an iridologist, look in my eyes, and it's not like reading palms or anything like that. And the way it's discovered, I believe, or what they tell us is anyway, I know that there's, pictures of irises in detail found in some tombs, some pharaoh tombs, but they tell us that around the 1800s, 1890s, something around there, this young Belgian boy, He went out to the garden and he seen an owl stuck in the vines, so he went out to help the owl out. And everyone knows they look at an owl's eyes and they see how big they are. So when he's trying to pull the leg free of the vines, he breaks the leg. Well, when he breaks the leg, he sees this appearing line shoot through the iris of the owl. So he started studying that, and that's where we get our mainstream, about the iridology. But anything that's happened to you, if you've had a heart murmur, anything like that, it shows up. If you have trouble with your lungs, any organs, anything wrong with your body, it shows up in your eye. One of the easiest things to look at is when you look at the outer color part of your eye. So say your eyes say you have blue eyes, right? Now at the very edge or the rim of those blue eyes, you should not have a dark, thick line. The color should go all the way out to the edge, and it should be bright and vibrant. If you have a dark, thick line around your eye, that's your skin. And so you may have toxin, you may have toxic buildup in the skin, or you may have skin issues. There's so many aspects to this that it's amazing to me. It kind of looks like the earth. It kind of, it's just amazing. It's an amazing study. The creation is really amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I wasn't familiar with it. Huh?
I said he knew what he was doing. God.
Yeah, that's yeah, I looked at it when you sent it, but I'm gonna look more. I mean, I'm interested in stuff like this. I like. I'll definitely check that out.
So I saw a comment. Do you drink OJ during your fast? And that's a no, because it has fructose sugar in it, which, the whole goal of me doing this is to get off the sugar, the carbs.
Yeah, man,
sugar's definitely no good.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. So Thomas, have you been on before? North, I remember.
Yeah, one time.
Okay. Oh, which Thomas is this?
This is Joe's friend, Thomas.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. That's what I wouldn't. Yep. I'm used to seeing your last name, so when it just said Thomas. Good to have you back, brother.
For sure. Definitely been enjoying the shows. Last night's was pretty good.
Yeah, it's the shows are definitely easier when Joe's here because he does all the work. He
right
makes it very easy. I just sit and listen. But North, what I mean, I guess North is your quote unquote handle, but I can't remember. What'd you say you go by again?
Yeah, man, North. Most people know me by North Star, or you
okay.
can just call me North. Yeah.
All right, I wasn't sure. I couldn't remember. I've got a bad memory, man. At 50 years old, it's fading.
Did anybody check out Jeranism's show last night with
somebody needs to mute. Let me see. I think that North, that might be you. Hold on.
I think he's live right now with Brother Sanchez.
Who's that? Jeranism?
Yep. Well, he was.
Who is that? Someone's got their speakers routing back to their microphone. Is that, who said that? Was that Thomas? Say something again, Thomas. I think that's Thomas. I think that's him. What was it with the Jeranism show last night?
Oh, he had Caleb on there. I don't know if you know who he is, but that guy's awesome. He's on TikTok, but I mean, he's a bright. I wish all our kids that age were as bright as him.
I wish he had more people doing what he's doing. Yeah, he's definitely raising awareness.
Yeah, but they were doing a space bloopers thing, and I think it was the recent Artemis launch, and it's just some of that stuff is just so bad. I mean, they're trying to pass this off in 2023, and it looks like they did it back in pre 2000.
Yeah, they haven't got any better at it. They're if anything, they're getting worse.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at SpaceX, right? Like that was a total joke, just sending up a car in space, and then the Earth was glitching out in the background. They're using the same clouds. Like you would have thought Elon, with all the money he had, would have done stuff better, but man, it was if anything, it just got worse.
Right. Well, you know, if it looks so fake, it's real.
Yeah. So, Greg, what's been going on with you?
I definitely know that.
I'm sorry. Yep. Go ahead, North.
Oh, go ahead.
I definitely know the one China did for the moon. That was wow. Yeah, definitely ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you see that one?
When
the
they
Chinese
landed,
rover that landed on.
Yeah, they landed on the backside, right?
Yeah.
The dark side of the moon.
Yeah.
That's
oh my God.
It doesn't take much. They're the worst. Yeah, definitely. I'm waiting for someone worse to come out.
I think
It's
that's
definitely
Tommy speaking to you. It's not North.
Yeah, I'm Thomas. It's definitely something spiritual because people really I don't know, they'll argue till their death on it being fake or real.
Yeah. I've had people write me for every single literally try to explain to me every single blooper, right? Like on my bloopers, they'll send me an email going, if you didn't see on this one, and if you didn't see, and I'm like, man, you're grabbing at straws, man. Like one or two, maybe I could understand, but you're trying to go through every one, you know, when there's clearly a harness, like just clearly.
Well, it's all belief, you know.
It's all what?
It's all belief. Crow 777 always says belief is the enemy of knowing.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's a religion to them. It's just they believe it no matter what. No matter what you show them, they will believe it.
I'll tell you, I was never a NASA fan. Even when I was an atheist, you know, prior to 2016, I was never into NASA. Like I didn't have any of their stuff in my house. I didn't wear any of their gear. I didn't watch their videos. I think I knew it was just, there was nothing impressive about what they were doing. I think.
Oh, I was. Oh my God.
I think you'd have to think it's like, you'd really have to think it's real. I think maybe, you know, I think if I had really thought it was real, I might've been that into it. And maybe I knew, in the back of my head, I knew. I don't know. I was just never into it.
I used to rush home. I would set alarms for the rocket launches. This is right before SpaceX. I got back into NASA. I was real big into NASA. Probably my mom died when I was 15. So a couple years before that, probably between like 10 and 15 years old, I was real big into them. And then mom died and I kind of went another direction, you know, having to focus on life. But I think it was like, I would say 2013, 2014. Like I found Flat Earth at the beginning of 2016 because I know it was cold in Florida, so I remember that. But
are you in Florida?
I used to schedule. Yeah, I live in Florida, but I'm all over the country, man. I drive truck. So
That's about when I got in.
now.
Sounds like we got in at the same time.
A lot of people did, Bobby.
Yeah.
There's probably if you just do a survey and ask people, when did you start seeing the flat earth or the truth or whatever? I guarantee you probably 75% of them are going to say 2015 or 2016.
Yeah. Oh, that's makes sense, right? That's when if you came by one video, they just kept coming, right? Like you watched one video and the next one was better and the next one was better. And they was just, you know, if you like that video, you're going to like this one, right? It was excellent. Those were the days.
Sure. The guy last night was talking about the Nibiru he was studying Planet X. I was doing the same exact thing.
I was
first.
Yep. Yeah, I remember that.
I was big into.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
I was so bad on that. My wife at the time told me, she was like, "You got to leave that at work. Like, don't bring that home anymore." Because I was like, I think they're going under the ground. Like, there's this planet coming at us. Like, I don't know if you ever heard of Jade Helm 15. I don't know if you ever did any research on that, where they got like in Missouri, they take trucks underground. They have these caves, and
I'm familiar with the
they do a lot
domes and the like cross country tunnels that they have all over the
Yep.
place. Yeah.
So I was thinking that tied in with they're blocking out the sunrise and the sunset, and they're still doing that. I was like, are they trying to cover up a planet in the sky or something? I just felt like something was coming, man, for real.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Real quickly.
It got to the point. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say real quickly, several of the people in the chat were talking about John Jones, and someone asked me like my thoughts on it. And I just say I used to not miss any MMA fight, none. I was watching Japan Vale Tudo, Thailand Vale Tudo, Pride, UFC, you name it. If it was I was watching them all, but I got disenfranchised with it when the Conor McGregors and the Ronda Rouseys came out, right? I was and it used to be about, like, I got into it for jiu-jitsu, right? So it used to be about, showing the dominance of jiu-jitsu, right? But nowadays, a lot of the fights never even hit the ground. It turned into like amateur boxing almost. It was like devolved into like a tough man contest. So yeah, I just lost but I mean, I always catch the highlights. I saw I saw him finish. I saw him finish Cyril Gain, but I don't watch them or analyze them anymore. I just thought I'd throw that out there since they were talking about it in the chat. But now grappling, I can still get into. Although honestly, I'm kind of turned off by, what's his name? Gordon Ryan, who's like the best grappler out there right now.
What is that? Grappling.
Jiu-jitsu is a form of grappling. So wrestling would be like ground fighting. You could call it ground fighting with strangulations, with joint locks, pins, just ground fighting. So wrestling, judo, jiu-jitsu. In the earlier half of UFC, the dominant fighters were taking people to the ground. They were using grappling, but now everyone's become an anti-grappler.
And when you say wrestling, you're talking about like college or high school wrestling.
Yeah.
Any grappling? I was big into boxing. Boxing was my thing.
Yeah. I admire boxing. It's not my thing. I don't know. I'm 6'4", and I should have.
I never do it, but I love watching.
Yeah. I do practice some, but I box with the guys in my gym, but I'm not great at it.
Are you 6'4"?
I'm 6'4", yeah. A solid 6'4", 170, 6'4", 172. I'm back to 6'4", 172. We've got an echo. That might be you, Thomas. Yep. 6'4", 172. I was 215 at one point, but lost all that. Greg, you're pretty quiet tonight.
Just listening. I've got a few things to say though.
Yeah.
Just real quickly, because he mentioned Jade Helm that was 2015, and that was one of the ones that probably kind of got me. For anybody that looked into it back then, there was so much numerology that seemed to line up, and of course, if you're looking for it, you can find a lot of it. And I was pretty certain at that time that this was something a lot more serious than what it was. I would talk to some military people when I'd see them around, and they legitimately seemed like they didn't know what the heck I was talking about. I wasn't out there pushing it hard, but I did talk about it a little bit more than, or even think about it more than I would like to admit. But initially, you guys talking about fasting, and I mentioned breatharianism. So breatharian, as you saw, you read the definition. It's basically, I learned about it probably circa 2015 when I started to be aware of the flat earth. And I can't remember what he goes by. Black dude, Dave.
Murphy?
Yeah,
allegedly Dave. Yeah.
So he had put out some videos on this, and he did the whole breatharian thing. And it's basically where you don't eat. You can maybe drink a little bit. Some people don't even have water. And it just seems so out there. He was describing how he was so into it that he would go days and forget to eat. And he got into a relationship, and the woman, and then also when you go out, because eating is such a communal, thing, going out with a bunch of friends, if you're not eating, people started to be really thought it was so awkward. So part of the reason he started to eat more again was because of this girlfriend and then that whole situation like that. And I'd seen a short documentary on some monk in India, maybe, I can't remember where it was. And he allowed a hospital to do some testing on him. He said, as long as it's not anything invasive, they could monitor him in their setting for a while. And if I recall, this has been years since I've looked at this, but if I recall, he would still technically like urinate in the body and then it would just be absorbed again. I don't know how it worked out, but they saw something was going on. But he wasn't eating, wasn't drinking water. He had allegedly gone, what was it, like 50, 60 years without it. And we know that a big reason that we are told to drink so much water is to flush out all the toxins.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily that we have to have all that water. And I guess you train your body in this way. I'm just assuming that maybe, you take it in through the pores, what you need out of the moisture. I saw another one. It was done, this show that was done in Israel. And there's the guy is pretty buff. He looks very fit. And one of his followers didn't believe that he was going multiple days, all these days regularly without eating or even water. So they set up was basically like a reality TV show style setup with cameras all around his house. And he went 9 days without any food or water. And on, I think it was day 2, they had a doctor there and they were doing blood tests every day. And the deal was that if the doctor said, we're calling it off, it was done. I think it was day 2 that they went to draw blood and he fainted, but they figured it out. It's just because he's so squeamish around the needles. And they let him run on through the entire time. And he was a little hungry and thirsty at the end. And of course, you can't rush back into eating and drinking a lot at the end of something like that. But he went 9 days and he has a course where he trains people to go, regularly, weeks, whatever at a time. He had started out with, if I recall, first of all, having a healthy diet. And then he had moved to like juicing and slowly prepared the body for this. And then it got to the point where it was like, oh, I'll have an apple in a couple days, or I'll have this, just very, very little bit. And his class wasn't so much about trying to teach you to not eat. It was trying to kind of counter what we are also, especially here in the West, used to, this overconsumption. And that we don't necessarily need, and we use that water to flush out all the junk we put in. But anyway, it's a topic. I don't know if it's been censored. I don't know what can be found. Like I said, this was years ago that I looked into it, but some of these videos were just mind-blowing. And sure, they could have faked some of the stuff, especially you're seeing something in Israel that looks like a reality TV show, but it seemed pretty legit. So I recommend y'all check that out. It always seemed really cool to me when people are frightened about food shortages and let's be preppers. If we could train our bodies to not need that much, you would be so much more, have a peace of mind. Like, okay, you've got this much storable food, but you don't even hardly need any of it. So that was a pretty cool topic that I haven't really heard discussed much. And it's been a long time since I've heard it covered. So taking fasting to a whole new level.
I'd be afraid, man. I eat all the time. And I struggle to maintain like 172, right? Like that's my fear, is that I'll drop below 170. I couldn't imagine like a 10-day fast. I'd be afraid I'll drop to 160. Even at that, I'll try it, but hopefully I'd have fear that I have some muscle atrophy, right?
What do you weigh now?
172, right? And it's hard to maintain 172. Like I got to eat, I eat a lot of protein and,
Yeah. So if you went 3 days, you'd probably lose at least 5 pounds. It's most of it's water weight.
I've got easily 5 pounds around my gut, right? Like I'm not in the, the 40-year-old shape. If just that went away, I'd be great, right? Like if I retained the little bit of muscle I've got, man, I'm all about it. So I'll try it. We'll see what happens. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, I don't think you start losing muscle mass until you eat all the fat off your body first, but I'm not sure about that.
Well, as Christians, we know who kind of is in control of this realm. And one thing that was a little unsettling about that, following the guy through the house for 9 days, is he talked about it being the prana and this energy in the air and stuff. So it kind of gets into like, should we even be messing with that? You know, that was something that kind of.
Now, Greg, you said you were into the DUMs, right?
No.
Huh?
Nothing.
Said,
what's up?
No, didn't earlier you said you were like pretty big into the underground tunnels and whatnot, or did I misunderstand? No, that wasn't. No,
not me. No, I just topped off. I just spoke about Jade Helm, that I was just that whole military operation. So there were.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, at the time, Jade Helm. So one thing that you were seeing, like my family still kind of mocks me and laughs at me because Bluebell ice cream. I don't know if you have that, but it's in the town Brenham, just on the outskirts of Houston here. And there were photos and people were talking about it like, oh, these ice cream trucks are driving around with the military. And that's one of those things that I should have kept my mouth shut about. It seemed like, what's going on? Like, and I'm speculating, is this for, taking bodies, in these freezer trucks? But so it wasn't the underground stuff for me. It was mostly just seeing, and friends would photograph and see it. And maybe it's one of those things in part because you're more aware of it because you're kind of looking for it. But it seemed like there was definitely something up. I believe that there was this Jade Helm operation underway, and you were seeing just train loads of tanks and all kinds of military vehicles being moved around in a lot of places.
Was the Jade Helm when they did the mock exercise where they were fighting against civilians? Like it was all a mock exercise, but they basically had to contain and suppress like U.S. civilians, right? Is that what that was?
I think that was part of it.
Okay.
I just recall so much of the stuff of actually seeing a lot of stuff being moved around, and it didn't seem like they were just taking it to the coastal places to be shipped out overseas. Seemed a little odd.
Now, when someone brought up DUMs, like the underground DUMs and all the underground, and I've heard truckers give testimony that you can cross the U.S. underground tunnels, right? I don't know how. I don't doubt it a bit, but I'm sure everyone in here has seen the Denver International Airport, videos that were made. That was some pretty interesting stuff. The murals on the wall and whatnot. I know everyone's seen that, but
yeah, I happened to be there when they were having an art. I've gone through that airport a number of times, and we had a bit of a layover. I was taking photos of the stuff all around there, and there happened to be something with that Egyptian, I forget which one, god of the underworld, and so they have
Anubis.
Lucifer, the blue horse, up front with the red eyes that fell on the artist, supposedly killed him. So that was off in the distance, and this is right as you're going through the check-in screening stuff, and you look out the windows, and you've got Lucifer in the distance, and then you've got that god of the underworld Egyptian dude like closer up to the building, just to top it all off with all the other eeriness. It was pretty crazy. So I've got photos where it's got both of those. I don't know how long it was on display there.
Yeah, that's supposedly one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. I think it's death, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I was
sorry, go on.
No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, just we had a little dead air. I was gonna say another recent experience was, I told you, Bobby, that I go to a relatively small church here in Houston. I was happy to find it. And our worship leader, which I didn't even know what that meant for a while. I always think of like, was that your pastor? The worship leader was the gentleman who would kind of keep the entire thing going. And, he played the music.
They do all the music.
Exactly. And so I think maybe this Sunday is his last Sunday, if it wasn't last Sunday. And he just moved to a church that is literally directly across the street from NASA, which is about 40 minutes from our church.
Yeah.
And he had texted me on a few days back and said, "Hey, Greg, can you come help me move some stuff, from the church to my new church?" And I just let it out. So we're pulling up. He's like, "Oh, and there's NASA." And I said, yeah, next to Disney, that's Satan's favorite place. And I just straight up said, "Yeah, I know the earth to be flat, motionless." And he's been at that with the church that I was with. We just merged recently, but he had been with one of the two for 14 years, and he had gone to Bible college and music school for all of that. He knows the word pretty well. I mean, he's definitely a dedicated believer, but that was kind of a new thing for him. And it was, I'm glad I did it. I've told some other people at the church. And then we go in and we're getting a tour from the guy who's heads of the grounds there. And when we're in the sanctuary at one point, there's a woman back there working on setting up some stuff for the overhead displays for the coming Sunday. And everything in NASA is so compartmentalized. You have contracts from different companies. I'd like to see the numbers of how many people are contracted and how many people are directly employed by them. But both of them had worked at NASA. The guy that was giving us a tour, he works at NASA. She had worked, and then they started talking about how they worked on some programming for an abort mission for the space shuttle. Like, yeah, you're sitting there working and designing something that you don't want to ever have to use. And I'm just biting my tongue. And I don't necessarily think that they're liars. Like we've discussed before, I think that they believe it all. So anyway, it was nice to have that conversation with him. And he started asking some questions. He's like, do you think this is salvation? And I explained the thing we discussed about, no, it's not going to save you if you know that or not. But I told him about how many testimonies there are. And it was, he kind of straight out did like we hear a lot, like, well, I'm busy with life anyway. I got all this going on. I'm going to move. And then, so, I said, I wasn't expecting you. I wasn't trying to tell you to start researching this heavily. I just wanted to share this to you. And the most frustrating thing is later on, you're like, why didn't I say that? Why did I say that? Why didn't I say this? Because my mind starts racing. I cannot calm down and just like get these few thoughts together. I think I did a good job of not just beating him over the head with a bunch of nonsense and just kind of hit some good basic points and kept the Bible tied in. But anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because that's, I've told you before, living here in Space City, and it seems like I'm constantly having these different interactions that are pretty rare, to be going to this church that's directly across the street from NASA, meeting two people that work there. And yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, when people say it's not really important for your salvation, I want you to read this to them. Read Proverbs chapter 8, verses 22 through 36, right? And it's speaking about wisdom is speaking, and it's speaking literally about the creation. Even when he carved a circle upon the face of the deep, right? And when he established the heavens, and when he placed the highest dust of the world in its place, and all these different things. And then wisdom says this. It speaks about rejoicing in the habitable part of his earth, right? So it goes into much detail about the earth. And then the conclusion is, now therefore hearken unto me, O ye children, for blessed are they that keep my ways, hear instruction, be wise, refuse it not. Blessed is the man that heareth me, watching daily at my gates, waiting at the posts of my doors. For whoso findeth me findeth life, and shall obtain favor of Yah. But he that sinneth against me wrongeth his own soul. All they that hate me love death, right? So I would encourage everyone to read Proverbs 8, 22 through 36. And this is where we get the circle, where it actually is. It's upon the face of the deep, and it's carved into that, right? And then when we want to know, well, what is the face of the deep, your pastor may ask, or the preacher, just take them to Job 38 verse 30, and it'll tell them that the face of the deep is frozen. So there's a frozen face with a circle carved in it with water beneath it, covered, right? So there's so many details. So when you take the word and you adulterate the word, and you teach people that the word teaches us fear, or there's any room for you to do such a thing, to adulterate the word and dilute it like that, that's dangerous territory, especially for a pastor or someone calling themselves a teacher.
Yeah, I think you're.
To the text, yeah.
I think
I
you're a
appreciate
false. I believe you're a false. I mean, I hate to say it, right? I'm sure there are some that are. I'll give some the benefit of the doubt and say that there's a number out there that just don't know better, right? But I think you're misleading the people. You're misleading the congregation. Like if you're telling them that the earth is spherical, or you're not teaching them Genesis, and you're not, then you're allowing them to follow Satan. You're allowing them to be deceived by Satan. I'd even go as far as to say you're walking them into the lion's den, right? Like, I think that truth right there is like, should be the forefront of the, and it is, right? It is the forefront of the Bible, right? So the first thing you need to know. It's what tells you that science, that they're going to lie to you is science. So I absolutely agree with you on that. I don't want to go to a church. I know, Greg, I don't want to say disagree. I don't want to go to a church that doesn't teach flat earth. That's why I gravitate to either hanging on his words or Kingdom in Context. I'm just as happy being a virtual congregation, right? So when I'm driving in my car, I listen to either Sean or Ken talk, and those guys are taking the Bible literally, and I love it, man. I absolutely love what they're saying. When I was going to church before, there was nothing supernatural about it, right? They took all the supernatural out of the church. And now when you hear the stories and you're talking about great giants and fallen angels, and I never heard any of that in church. Not in any, I'd probably been to church, I don't know, hundreds of times, maybe if I count my teenage years. I never heard any of that. I never knew there were fallen angels. I never knew there were giants. I never knew that angels took wives. I never knew that. I didn't know about any of this stuff. And all of a sudden they took the best parts out of the Bible. So yeah, I mean, absolutely, North, 100%. I'm with you.
Yeah, man. I wanted to remind a couple things. Sorry, man. Bobby, I wanted to get a chance to tell you this also. If you enjoy Rob Skiba and you go to his YouTube channel, you can get the link there for the Bible studies that we have, and you could join. I mean, there's a Bible study later on tonight, probably in a couple hours. So just to give you a heads up on that, if you want to join, and we can study, and we study those things every week. So that would be awesome. That one thing to say about these men who go to seminary school is that I remember probably 20 some years ago, there was kind of a poll taken about how many of you guys believe this stuff, right? And it was about half of them. The other half said, we're just doing it for a career. So when I look at a church or someone who calls himself a church, the easiest way, one of the easiest ways I think, is if they're incorporated with the state, right? If they're 501c3 tax exempt, Messiah paid the tax, right? He paid the tax. He didn't have to, but he did, right? So they are tax exempt. The state has usurped the headship from Messiah, and the state is now the head of the church and can tell the church what to do, what to say. And it's become a dead entity unto itself when it's supposed to be living stones. So that's one of the things that they're incorporated. I say, man, it's just a business, man. That's it.
Yep. Go ahead, Frederick.
I was going to say, not only that, but when you fall into this globalism stuff as a preacher and start teaching it, what that does is take the very foundation of the Word of God, which is the first book of the Bible, first few verses, it discredits all of that, and then, so in effect, what they're doing is trying to kill our God, by doing that. And also on the 501c3 thing, the churches don't even have to do that to not pay taxes. So I'm not sure why they're doing it. Maybe they're scared of, rebuke or whatever from the government, but you could still be a church without a 501c3 and not pay taxes.
Yeah. I've shared this story before, but I'll share it again, North, because I'm not sure. I think you'll appreciate it, and you may not have heard this. When I was growing up, one of my closest friends was very religious. I wasn't. I was an atheist, and I knew he was religious, and he knew I was atheist. But we were still best friends. We still ran. We were still ran around together, and I admired him. Right, like I admired that he he was, to me, he was just a righteous man. Right, and I did admire him for that. And we lost touch. He stayed in that town that I was from, Louisville, Kentucky, and 6 or 7 years ago, it was probably 3 or 4 years ago when I was probably 2 or 3 years into Flat Earth, maybe. And I was like, hey, I'm going to reach out to him. I'm going to go visit Louisville, Kentucky. And I did. I reached out, and I reached out to my 2 best friends at the time, and I met up with him. Now, that friend of mine, he went to seminary college and graduated from seminary college. And I was really excited because I found God, and I was like, man, for once, we're going to get back together and we're going to be able to jive on this subject that I couldn't jive with him before. And we get back, and we're on this boat. We're on a houseboat. Friend of mine has a big boat, and we sit down and we start talking, and I started sharing about, my new belief. And he goes, Bobby, it's just a book, man. And I was like, what? This was the most religious guy I knew, and he went to seminary college. Like, he's a certified preacher. He could have a congregation, and he lost the faith by going to seminary college. So I think they intentionally twist their beliefs there and teach them, they teach them like what's that theory called for the really long years? Like the years are like 1,000 years, like of creation, there's a name for that. But I think when they teach all that stuff and they make it all very unbelievable, these people lose their faith. Whereas if you were going to a college and like Rob Skiba were teaching it, or Ken Heidelbrecht or Sean Griffin or something, like, you'd be more sold. But yeah, that blew my mind that I went back. I was so excited about hanging out with him, and he lost the faith.
I'll tell you, man, it's amazing, man. I mean, we're talking like 20 some years ago. Half of these guys would say, I'm just doing this for a career, right? I don't believe this stuff. And a lot of the guys who go in, they don't believe what they're being taught. They'll come out of seminary. I mean, they'll say what they have to say, right? And they'll come out of seminary and they'll teach different things. So they went and paid someone to teach them something that's not even truth, right? You buy the truth and you never sell it according to the text itself, right? So here's a little test. Greg, you might want to do it with your pastor, and do it with as many pastors or teachers as you can, right? Just go up to them and say, can you tell me what are the elementary doctrines? Now, guys, this is not a joke. I've been doing this for over 25 years. I've done it with pastors who are from 30 years old to 70 and 80 years old, right? These guys do not even know the elementary doctrines as specified in Scripture. They don't know them, and they don't teach them, right? They teach what they were taught at seminary school. So there are 6 specified elementary or first things, right? The foundation that you build upon, and everything else is encompassed in that. And if you want to define those, they're in Hebrews, and it says, at a time when you ought to be teachers. So it's kind of giving them a reproving, it's rebuking them. At a time when you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you again what be the first things, the first principles, the elementary things, the elementary teachings or doctrines. And they'll teach the Trinity doctrine and all these other doctrines, and they'll call them cardinal doctrines, or they'll call them basic doctrines, basic foundational doctrines. And the Scripture gives you those and specifies what they are. And in my 25 years of experience of asking people what they are, believers don't even know what they are. And so it's amazing to me.
Yeah, I'm reading it right now. I saved it when you had told me about it last time, Hebrews 6.
Yeah.
So very interesting.
Yeah, thank you for that, North. But I'm not trying to change your mind, Bobby, or anybody, but it seems when I hear this discussion, sometimes it's as if we're treating it like every pastor up there is preaching the globe, and they just are so adamant for that. Remember, we all, like 2015 for me, right? Like that's a big number that was put out earlier for a lot of us. These are humans. I don't care if they went to seminary or not, or anything. They're humans. They dedicate their life. You know, I believe, like my pastor, to the Lord for many years. He's taken care of all of his children, his family, his work, the congregation. And I don't, of course that can be an excuse. Well, I'm busy with life, but I don't think it's come across their plate. So we can't fault them for that. They're not, my pastor was not up there preaching the globe. Now, when he went over Genesis and he mentioned the firmament, he said, well, I don't know exactly what that means, if it's the clouds or something. And I don't, he's not being deceptive.
Yeah.
If I wish it was more honest, yes. But what are we to do? Are we to have this truth and just keep it amongst us and not try to bring it into the church? Why not try to be that person that goes in and can help change some of these churches? The vast majority of churches are not going to change because there is an intent from the get-go. But I believe if you find one like where I'm going, there are some real true churches that have expository preaching, even if they may be off on some points. Why can't I be that vessel that can come in there and do like I did to that other gentleman?
Yeah.
And then maybe something will, like I talked about, creating that file folder where you start to put in, next time you hear something, he has somewhere to put it. Because wouldn't it be nice to come back one day and we're having a discussion? Oh yeah, my church, we were talking about that too. But I also wouldn't want to go to a church that was so focused on flat earth like we are here. That's not the Bible. That's part of the Bible. It's important. It's the beginning. But so many quote unquote truthers, I feel, want their church and their pastor to be truthers. And that's not, it's a different place. There's so much more to God's word. So I can't fault these people. You're going to find bad churches. You're going to find bad pastors. You're going to find the Masons teaching, acting like they love you and intentionally misleading you. But man, I still encourage anybody that's considering it, if you can be fortunate enough to find a good one, do it. And then do like I've done. There might be a time where you let me on here again, that down the road, and I say, man, I ended up having this conversation with these people and the pastor, and I'm kind of been pushed out, or I didn't want to be there, or I felt uncomfortable. It hadn't come to that. All the others in the congregation that know that about me, I've had good conversations with 5 to 10 people that know that I'm that. They haven't judged me one bit. They asked some pretty good questions. They weren't all interested enough to dig into it. One older man, he did say, hey, can you bring me something? And I feel bad I haven't, but it's one of those things where I'm like, what do I bring them? Excuse me, I ramble on. I go to
no, it's okay. We don't want, like,
continue.
I don't fault anyone that goes to church. And like, I agree. I said that. That's actually what I said, was that some of these people just, I can't fault them. I think it takes more faith, right? For like, man, if you're truly a man of the cloth, and I'm sure there are some out there that truly is a man of the cloth that believes we live in a galaxy, right? Like in a cosmos. And that's even harder, right? Like if that person has faith, that's amazing. But it's so easy to have faith the moment you live in an enclosed stationary plane. Like all of a sudden it's like it's easy. It's almost cheating, right? Like but the church I went to, here's a part of the story I didn't tell. I went to this big church and the pastor was great. Everyone loved him. Everyone loved him. It was fun to watch his things, but it was such a big church that every new member that came in, they had a video crew in a room. And after you got baptized, they took a video and introduced you to the congregation. So it was always like a 5 or 10 minute video before every, congregation. And it showed the new member, and there's always another one lined up, right, for the next congregation. So when I come in, they said, "Hey, how'd you, what brought you here?" It's always the same interview with everyone. So what brought you here? What brought you to the church? And I said, "Well, I found out the earth was flat, and that's why I'm here." So my video never got played, right? They just skipped over mine. They was like, "We're not playing this Fruit Loop," right? So I kind of took offense to that. I was like, okay, you don't want to hear my story. I mean, just because I wasn't real happy about that. But on top of that, they had astronauts all over the walls, and that was the other kicker for me, right? But I could see if someone believes in that, you know, putting astronauts on the walls, but you're unintentionally misleading our children. Just the way I look at it.
The thing about introducing someone to flat Earth is, and this is what I find so frustrating, is the amount of time to watch them go through the 5 stages of grief before they finally even partially accept it. You know, so it's just so frustrating because it's obvious. You know, once you can get your head around that what we live on, it's like, why did I not see this earlier? And so when you're a flat earther trying to, I don't want to say convert, but maybe just lay this information on them, it's just frustrating watching them just go through
and I remember
and anger and grief.
I remember the
Go
two
ahead.
people interviewing me. The two people, you know, they had this nice camera crew. This guy had this expensive camera. You know, this room was made. It was like a really expensive room. This church had a lot of money. It was a big church. It was a new church. It was gorgeous. But I remember the young lady, she was young, probably in her early 20s, just out of college. And the guy was probably in his mid 20s. And, you know, I thought, because I made sure to put a little zinger in there. And, you know, and I said, you know, I found flat earth. And then once I saw it was all in the Bible, you know, I said that, you know, I said, once I saw that the Bible confirmed it, I was sold, right? And I thought for sure they were going to go, it's in the Bible, or, you know, like, what are you talking about? They didn't. They just went, oh, okay. So anyway, they just went right past it. Like, I didn't even say that, right? And I was like, okay. They thought I was nuts. They didn't even want to hear why I thought that.
Right.
They just said, he's so far out there, we're not even gonna entertain it.
And that's crazy. Our church does videos, but it's for the testimony that they play before your baptism. So they're not all the time. Being a small church, it's you go a number of weeks before you see one. And so I got baptized again. I was baptized as an infant, and then I did, what was it, 2 years ago now? And you go through a little interview process. And so that worship leader and the pastor were the two that gave me my interview. And as I told him the other day, and I told a couple other people recently, I felt like I wasn't being honest when I gave my testimony because I left that out. And it was part of it. There was more to my testimony. So I wasn't really being dishonest completely, like making stuff up. It wasn't fictional, but that was part of it. And so I kind of regret it. And I'm so bullheaded, and just, that's not like me to ever care what anybody thinks or to fear anything. So it was kind of odd that I didn't let that be known up front, but here I am telling him, and it's never too late for something like that. But yeah, that's crazy, Bobby. And when you see astronauts, you know, I mean, that's one of those churches that there's no changing it. Even if those people that with the video, obviously there's somebody at the top of a pyramid.
Well, so you're right, actually. So that was my second time being baptized, this time of my volition. And now that I think back on it, it was for people that got baptized, because it was like they did baptisms like once a month or something. And there was like 3 of us that got baptized, something like that. And everyone else got their video played but me. Right. So because I went for a few weeks, you know, and I was like, man, you're going to do me like that? Like, you're just act like it's.
I don't get why, you know, I was raised as a Catholic and then apostatized with Buddhism for 30 years, but I was baptized as an infant. And I don't understand why they do that, because you're supposed to willingly, knowingly, you know, baptize yourself because you're a child of God, you know. And when you're an infant, you have no clue what's going on, you know. So I don't know.
Yeah, I grew up in a Presbyterian church, and so they believe in infant baptism. Mm-hmm. And some years ago, I listened to a discussion / debate between John MacArthur and I love him. How can I not think of his name now? Anyway, it was pretty interesting, because if you really dig through the Bible, I guess just like a lot of these topics, maybe some would argue it is, but I don't think it's specifically clear. You know, I believe in a believer's baptism. It makes sense to me, but I can also see how some might legitimately think that it could be done that other way, like the Presbyterians. And I thought it was pretty fascinating. No matter what you think of these two men, they definitely, and even if you have disagreement with some of them, they know the word and they can recite scripture. And it was a pretty fascinating discussion.
I guess an argument for it would be that, if something happens to the infant and they die before being baptized, then, they'll go to heaven. But, I don't think, they say we're all born with original sin. I guess that's true to a case, but I don't think an infant that's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 years old has much sin, to speak of anyways. So,
and R.C. Sproul, by the way, was the other one. I don't know if you ever listened to him. I don't know how that would fit within the truth community. He was Presbyterian. He passed away in, I think, 2017. He's put out a whole lot of books. I really like a lot that I've learned from him. I like listening to him.
Can I baptize my own daughter? I mean, would that, like, I'm just curious. Everyone here, most of these people go to church. Like, what are y'all's thoughts? Is it legitimate or no?
One thing.
How old is she?
7.
At my church, I've seen, children that are around that age that knowingly, they know what they're doing, because they were raised in church. But I mean, you can do it, but I'm not sure. I think it's something a person has to do willingly rather than a parent tell them to do it for them.
I would let that child know. I would let that child know, how important of a decision that is, and the dedication that it's going to take. One of the interesting things I would like to tell you all is, baptisms are one of the elementary doctrines. Just so happened. Yeah.
Yep,
so
the first one. It was the first one. Yeah.
Yeah, and we can talk about like the age of accountability and, scripturally, would this be done? We can talk about those things, and it may be so, However, I would use caution. Your daughter better than I do, and you know her better than anyone else here, right? So, if it's a wise decision.
Well, she's expressed that she wanted to, right? Like, she wants to be baptized. And my thinking is she can, I would assume she would do it again as she gets older to reaffirm. So it wouldn't be like the final one. It's not, for fear that it may not count. Right. But it can't hurt anything, right? Like, if I tell her, hey, do you want to be baptized? And she says, yes, I just dunk her in the water,
If I had kids and I had a kid that wanted to be baptized, I'd probably take her to be baptized. But that's just
well,
me.
what would be the difference though? I don't think it says, does it say anywhere in the Bible that you have to be like ordained or something? Like, I mean, that's my question, right? It's like my question to people here is, can any Christian baptize another Christian?
Yes. And does she know what baptism represents? And if not, I would advise against it. But if she knows what it represents, then you've been fully through it. And not only that, but the elementary teachings. I mean, she has to have a foundation. You have to have somewhere to put those roots, man.
She watches a lot of Christian stuff with me. So she gets plenty of it. That's for sure.
Yeah. Baptism too is a point of dispute by many, and there's also a baptism by the Holy Spirit and also baptism by water, which are two different things. So some people think baptism is salvational. I'm not sure if I'm all the way there yet, but we'll see.
And wait till you get the ones speaking about baptizing for the dead.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Baptizing for the dead. That's new to me. Yeah.
Yeah, some people teach that the baptism for the dead. I believe it's, I don't know if it's the Mormons. There's a few people who do it, and they have a teaching that they've come up with from 1 Corinthians 15, where it says, "Or else, why are they baptized for the dead?" But the context of that is a little bit earlier. that's kind of the conclusion. Earlier, speaking of those who said there is no resurrection, and he says, "Howbeit there say some among you." This is 1 Corinthians 15, I think, verse 12 is where it starts. "Howbeit there be some among you that say there is no resurrection." If there is no resurrection, then Christ is not risen. And if Christ is not risen, your hope is in vain, and your faith is in vain, and our preaching is in vain, and we're found liars, right? Because we say that he was raised up whom was not raised. And so it goes on, and it speaks, in that manner, is speaking against people who said that there is no resurrection. And he's telling them, if there's no resurrection, then everybody who has fallen asleep in Messiah, so all the believers, if they've fallen asleep and there's no literal resurrection like there was with Messiah as he walked out the tomb, if you're telling me that those people are not going to walk out the tomb, then I'm telling you they're all perished. There's no hope for them. And then he goes on and he's still reprimanding them, and he goes on and he says, or else why would they be baptized for the dead? Right? So it's a context issue, but it's found in 1 Corinthians 15.
I'm just reading some of the comments, trying to see if we have anything juicy in here. Yeah, he said, so there was a good one. Mr. Plump said, I don't believe all can be forgiven. I mean, there's mass child rapists and killers, right? Can Jeffrey, that's a one I don't understand. Can Jeffrey Dahmer be forgiven? And I've heard people say that he can.
Well, he supposedly has repented too. So before he died, he converted to Christianity before he died.
Yeah.
So I was watching that Jeranism thing last night, and the other guest besides Caleb brought up a movie on Hulu that I need to watch. It's actually a series. It's called Future Man. And he was telling us it's about this. We created an AI that killed most of the people. And this one guy, like Elon Musk, decided to build a rocket space to go to Mars, to live there and colonize it. And it turns out that the AI, spoiler alert, the AI is the guy trying to get these people into the space ship. And as soon as they're in there, he uploads their consciousness into the computer or whatever and kills the people. It seemed very interesting. I'm going to have to watch it. And, I don't watch a lot of TV, but that one I might have to.
When I watched, this was years ago before I quit watching so much TV. Once in a while I'll watch something, right? But not very often. But right at the beginning, I think this was 15 or 16. There was I think the show was called Ascension, but all these people for decades are living in this rocket, this big spaceship, and they're going through the galaxy for decades. Just families, are dying off, and new generations are surpassing them, right? And they never left Earth. Right? It's just a ship sitting on, I know I just ruined it for you guys because that is the big ending, but it was very entertaining because some people would go to kill themselves and never be seen again, like go to throw themselves out the space lock, but people would just grab them when they went out the space lock and then be, integrated back into society. It was actually pretty entertaining. It was a good show. I had no idea it was coming up with that ending.
I've probably seen it, but I have such a bad memory for movies and television, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah, you can watch it a second and third time and have no idea, how.
Yeah, or get halfway through a movie and say, "Hey, I've seen this before. I know the ending here."
Yeah. It's hard, right? Because, my daughter loves movies, right? She loves going to the movies. We haven't taken her to very many, but, it's hard, right? Because there's all these things, what do? These movies have but like Avatar, she wanted to see it. She was dying to see it. And so I think I've taken her, like in the last year, I've taken her to one movie. But
yeah, I can't with my daughter. It's tough. We have a bunch of DVDs and there's limited things we can watch online. And she loves, like, let's have a movie night. And so there's a Christian bookstore down the road that we found some somewhat decent DVDs from there. There's a series for the children. I don't know if you're familiar with Veggie Tales. So she'll be 10 soon, but we still both get a kick out of those. They're hysterical. So we've got a huge library of that. And it's totally different at her mom's place, right? She has Disney Plus there. She has a TV in her room, has a freedom. I haven't had cable in years. She doesn't remember us having cable. And it is tough because, like, I want to watch something, but it's when you know as much as we do.
Right.
I mean, the most innocent seeming video I could pick apart and be like, oh my God, this is the intent.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Not only that, but the refresh rate is 60 hertz, which puts you at I think a beta brainwave.
I know that they did those studies at Dartmouth initially years ago, I think. I was wondering how that works with the different technologies for televisions, if it's still a refresh rate like that. I guess it is for any of their monitors and stuff. I guess you have different refresh rates, but yeah, it's trips me out.
Well,
like nephews,
like all my daughter, what she wants for her birthday, the only thing she's been asking for is to go to Disney. And man, that's the last place. As an adult, it's the last place you want to go anyway, right? Like the last thing you want to do is stand in line for an hour anyway. Even if it were a Christian event, it'd be hard to go to, much less the opposite, right? But I'll tell you the one thing we did that I would recommend everyone here to do, and I did thoroughly enjoy every minute of it, was the Ark Encounter in Kentucky. Like that was awesome. And they convinced me how it works, it all works. Like everything, they have PhDs in there showing you the science behind how it's absolutely doable.
Well, if you don't want to go to a church because they don't talk flat earth, how do you handle that they push dinosaurs so heavily there?
And
they don't talk,
you gotta take the good with the bad. Yeah. I mean, same thing. It's not that, I don't think it's fair to say I don't want to go to church.
Well, I didn't mean to say that. And I'm not. And
I'll never take offense. Don't worry. I'm not even remotely offended. Okay. I just think a more accurate way to say it is I would much rather prefer to go to, like, if I had my druthers, if one church was here teaching flat earth and the other one was teaching not flat earth, I would go to the one that's teaching the firmament and the flat earth, right? Like if I had my druthers, I'll choose a flat earth. But I'm just saying I'm totally okay with a virtual congregation. Like I'm fine with that. I have no issues with it. Just like North said, like Rob Skiva's got his virtual church, which I knew about before he passed, and I didn't realize it's still going. I didn't pay any attention to that. So
I'm happy to be in a church where they're not talking about, galaxies in space and all that crap, and are willing to actually address some political issues in our country that need to be addressed. But I think it's far and few in between that we can actually find a church that believes in flat Earth, which seems kind of strange, but considering the programming we've been through for the last 100 years, I guess it's not so strange.
Most people try to find a church based on comfort, right? And they'll say, "I seen a church down the street. Let's try it out, everyone." And so everyone will go, and maybe they got offended at something someone said, or someone looked at them funny, or looked at their clothes funny. "Oh, I don't like this church. I'm not comfortable. Let's go to another church." And it's not based on what the church teaches, what they believe. And also think of it like this. If you dress up and you go to a building that is known that these are the teachings they have, after years and years. If you go in a building, say you go in amongst a bunch of gangsters and they're wearing gang colors, and you're on the street, you're on the corner, right? And so you go up there and you have the same color on. Now, little Susie's going to drive by with her mother, and she's going to look out her window and she's going to see you with the gang colors on. and you're representing those people on the block, right? So when people see you go into churches that you're just trying out to see how it is, before you do your investigation before you step foot in those houses. Please do your investigation before you step foot in those places, man. Be fully aware of what you're stepping into. We wrestle with powers and principalities, man. And so this is a dangerous game, and that's all I got to say on that.
Yeah, I believe, and this isn't an attack. This isn't even remotely attack on you, Greg, or any church.
Yeah,
but I do.
Ever taken.
Yeah, thank you. I do believe that many churches are ran by Freemasons. Like I believe they recruit from Freemasonry lodges to become preachers, right? Like I believe that. Like that, it's kind of like a reward. Hey,
I agree.
We fill these positions of power, and I just believe that. So, and now I do think like when I think back of the church that I was going to, and when I was a kid, it was a small Lutheran Baptist church. It was very small, and I don't know. I want to believe, and I do believe that he was a good man who was teaching what he believed, and probably just like everyone else, there was no flat. That I'd never even heard of a flat earther at that time. I didn't even know they existed. And I think we were all sold. Like it's amazing that there's this resurgence, because in the 80s and 90s, I never heard the term flat Earth until I was, I don't know, 43 or something.
Yeah, I mean, I've been looking into the shuttle stuff, like I said, and moon landing many years ago. Out of all my research into all that stuff, I never had that come across until 2015.
So imagine being 43 years old and hearing the term flat Earth, right? 43. What? Flat Earth? Are you nuts? Bro, we've been all over the solar system. So.
But one thing I got to say about being with the local church, and I totally respect the idea of the virtual, is that, you kind of sharpen each other and you're going to get different types. Whereas, I mean, the whole term of preaching to the choir, right? If you go into a church online where it's a bunch of flat earth based, it's going to be one type of person. Even though my church is small, we're going to have a going away party for that couple, for the worship leader on Saturday, and there'll be all different types of conversation, and people can give you, I have a lot to learn from other people. We all have our own different viewpoints on all kinds of things. And for somebody like me who still struggles with sin and different stuff, it's nice to have that accountability as opposed to something like this. Like I can feel like you're a brother. I like this kind of friendship, online friendship we've had. I really appreciate it. It's beautiful. We didn't have this in the past, but I think there's also something to be said about the physical meeting, all the benefits of that. And again, I guess we need to stop prefacing it like that. I'm not going to take offense. You're not going to take offense. I'm not dogging you and you're not dogging me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just think that there's a lot of beautiful stuff. And to be honest, it can be a struggle sometimes, because every once in a while, maybe I want to back out. I want to be private and hidden, which is easier to do online. If you're volunteering and you're taking a part in different ways of serving at the church, well, you're there. You're more involved. You can't just go, fall off the cliff or the edge.
Now, how at the church you go to, how vocal are you though? Like, I mean, does everyone know you're a flat earther, or is it something you kind of don't bring up? It's like, don't ask, don't tell.
They were they had opened up earlier than most other churches, and they didn't require masks, and they had expository preaching, and there was just a lot of different elements that worked. So my friend who researched pretty hard around said, "Oh, he went over there. I followed him." Fairly early on, we were having lunch at one of the members' houses. They've got a beautiful backyard. A lot of people were over there, and I was just straight out telling it to the people at the table around me. I'd say there were probably 5 or 6 that knew very early on. I haven't had a lot of opportunities. I don't want to just out of the blue, like it was appropriate the other day when we're at NASA and he's pointing it out and he's going to church across the street from it. I've told some other people along the way when there was a nice opportunity presented, but I'm just going to guess that maybe 10 people know there. maybe up to 15.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I'm
I'm
not.
excited. I'm excited, like, to talk more. Maybe I'm hoping another opportunity will arise at this thing on Saturday. Since I told him that, maybe there'll be a chance where I could say, "Hey, by the way, I let him know the other day when I was helping him move some stuff that, yeah, you know." And the first thing I did is I showed him what the Logos software, what they show with. I said, "This is the Hebrew cosmology. This is when Jesus was walking around. This was how they saw it. He didn't tell them they were wrong." I said nearly all the other ancient civilizations saw it that way, and I kicked it off with that. So I kicked it off with that visual, showed him this, and I said, "This is what's described in the Bible," and he's of course familiar with that software, Logos. How do you say it?
Logos? Is it Logos?
North probably has an idea exactly. He knows. But yeah, maybe it's Logos. I hear it say it different.
It is Logos.
Okay.
It is Logos because that guy actually, he has the balls enough to say that the Bible describes a flat Earth, but he still is not a flat earther. He's a globalist.
Well, but here's the thing: is nobody disputes that the Israelites, the Hebrew cosmology was flat, right? That is the Hebrew cosmology. The writers of the Bible believed in a flat Bible. You can't go back and change that. They drew it in their Bible, right? There was drawings, right? And we knew that because that's what.
But there are Christians out there that read that and then they interpret it to allegory or whatever, and they say we live in a solar system.
I get that. Yeah, no, you can chalk the text up to allegorical. You can do that, but you can't deny that the writers of the Bible were flat earthers. You can't.
But some do. Some still do.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's what kills me. It's what kills me about trying to convert a Christian, not convert, but to enlighten a Christian that we live in a flat universe or flat plane, and they say, "Go look at the Bible," and they say, "I still don't believe it." I mean, it's crazy to me. That's what's so frustrating for me.
Yeah, I've had my conversations with a few. I've gotten some arguments on my Facebook. I'm very vocal on my Facebook, and plenty of them have.
I mean, they'll start getting in arguments about the firmament being the air above the atmosphere, and then the second heaven or third heaven or whatever being outer space, and it's just.
Yeah, or they go with the Kent Hovind explanation where it was an ice ball around the world and it melted, right? That was the flood. That was the great flood when the firmament melted.
That's when you show them the Proverbs 8:22 through 36, 27 being key. 27 saying, "I was there when he carved a circle on the face of the deep." Then we just need to ask Kent Hovind, or anyone who wants to say that this is a sphere according to Isaiah 40:22. I see this word circle or compass, same thing. He carved a circle in the face of the deep. Now, what is that? Is that a spherical earth? And what is the deep? The deep is frozen. And the waters beneath it are hidden as with a stone that covers them. So if the deep is like the deepest part, right? It's frozen solid and there's a face to it, and you have a circle carved into it, wouldn't it be perfect for that firmament to set down in? That would be perfect, right? Because there's got to be a reason. There has to be a reason for it. It's not there all willy-nilly, right? So the creation is all over the scriptures. Proverbs 8:22 through 36 again is one of the key ones that I like to compare with Job and Genesis.
Isn't it crazy how everything that we know is so and what's the word for this? It's designed so that it can be either, right? It can be interpreted as either. It's almost like you have to have faith, right? Like, it's not indisputable. It is with the Bible, right? But if you take the Bible out of it, you'd just be arguing forever. Some people are going to say it's a ball. Some people are going to say, you can make the argument when you can take 2D and make it 3D, or 3D and make it 2D, and everything works the same, right? It's all, you can make these arguments with refraction and these arguments, but none of it's provable, right? Because you can't lay a ruler over 4,000 miles. You can't do it. All you can do is say that can't be what we're seeing. No, it is what we're seeing. All you can do, it's such a perfectly designed, realm that you can't definitively say which is which. I mean, it's obvious to me, right? Like, there's no question. But the fact that there's people that can't see it at all is also an attestation that, it was designed that way intentionally. Almost so that you have to have faith, right? I wonder if that was intentional, right? Like because it goes right along with, why did God disappear for so long? Well, why wait 6,000 years or whatever to show up again? And I think that's so you can have free will. If there's a God if he's just standing above you, like imagine if we were alive and there's this God just standing above you going, make one mistake, that's a gross exaggeration, right? But my point is, I'm not sure how much people would act of their own free will. I'm not sure he could. Whereas if you lit people to their own vices and you say, now you can truly measure a man, because he can choose God or he can choose to be godless. I don't know. That's just me kind of wandering off into my thoughts. I may not have said that exactly how I meant it, but it's just always amazed me that it's so hard to differentiate. Inception. Yeah. I'm just reading the comments, guys. Everyone's gone. Greg left us. North went into silent mode. We might be wrapping up here. Oh, Frederick's back.
My modem decided to reboot. Perfect timing.
Yep. It's I was always told, I just saw KJV, right? And since I got into flat earth, I always default to KJV, right? I've always been told, King James is where it's at. You got to read King James. And 95% of people, at least that are what I call, truthers, they all read the KJV. But I was listening to Sean Griffin, and he was saying, if I understood him right, I mean, maybe I misinterpreted it, but I think he was saying like the KJV had some pretty misleading stuff in it. And he was going back to the, I can't get into the details. I just remember him saying that the KJV, he was comparing it with some older texts, right? Some older scriptures that were before that, the Septuagint and some other stuff. And he was doing a comparison of all the differences, and it kind of looked like the KJV wasn't the most accurate.
Yeah, there's the argument for the KJV is they took the original Hebrew and Greek and they sent it to like 14, 15 different scholars, biblical scholars, and they all translated into English, both Old Testament and New Testament. And then out of those 14 translation, they compared those and then came up with the KJV. But the thing about the KJV is it's got a king's name on it, which kind of, is misleading or, off-putting for some. But I think the KJV is probably the most accurate, in my opinion, next to the NASB and then the ESV.
Interesting. Yeah, Rich P, he said, I've never seen anyone. I'm the same. I feel the same about Sean, man. I've never seen anyone that could recite the Bible like that guy, man. He's like a biblical supercomputer. We got North.
Is that FF World?
No, that's Kingdom in Context.
Oh, okay. I have to watch some of that.
Just watch one of his things, because no matter what the subject is, he will bring up every reference from the canon through all the Apocrypha in his brain, and then he'll quote them all. And then he'll be like, well, the meaning means this. If we add in all these verses, this is what it means. But then if we add in the Apocrypha, it can mean this.
Yeah, it's also, there's also, it goes back to, a lot of translations go back to the Latin Vulgate, which they consider as corrupted, or, and then the KJV, I believe, comes from the Textus Receptus, so which people don't think is as corrupted, as some of the other ones.
Yeah, he gets into all that. Like he goes deep on all that. Sean blocked effed up world. I didn't know that. Yeah, I love Joe, man. Joe's my brother, but Sean is all. We're all brothers. We're all family. We all came from the same greatest of grandfathers, right? I think it's crazy how they've divided us all. Where did one creator come from before this realm? I don't, here's the thing, is it's a moot point. All you have to do is say, is there a creator? Yes or no. There has to be, because if someone wants to make the argument, well, who made him? Well, at some point, there can't keep being a chicken and an egg. It can't. At one time, there was a creator, right? So there's no reason for us not to believe that he's not. He said it himself. He's the Alpha and the Omega, right? He's the first and the last.
Yeah, there's some things like that our minds can't comprehend, and it's kind of useless to try to comprehend that. I can understand and respect asking the question, but it's one of those that we're not going to have anybody that's going to have a theory all of a sudden. Oh, this is how it started,
Well, some things are beyond our knowledge,
And does it even matter? Honestly, for me, it's the one true God, right? But he's the one that's responsible for my salvation. So that's all that really matters.
The thing I want to see is when we finally do get to the place we want to be going, is all things will be revealed, because then maybe we'll have some vindication,
Man, I can't wait. I'm big into megalithic structures, man. I have folders on every megalithic site, and anytime I come by one, I file a photo, I file it away. A video, I file it away, right? I cannot wait to see how the pyramids were built, all these, Pumapunku, Tiahuanaco, Göbekli Tepe, all these. I hope we get shown that, right? I can't wait. I hope we can just play it like a movie.
Right. I want to see how all this stuff was buried too. These cities that have been just buried over the years. And how the hell does that happen? So I want to know someday.
Göbekli Tepe, Potbelly Hill, that was filled in. They have proof that they because they made a mound over it. They buried it intentionally to hide, they assumed to hide it. I thought that was an interesting one.
Yeah, I lost a friend. A friend of mine passed away within the last couple of years after his second Moderna, and he was a ditch digger. He called himself, a younger guy, and so he had done stuff. What was it with the gas company, I guess, here in Houston before he had moved away? And he had told me, this is before I had a knowledge of this stuff, so I wasn't asking questions. But he talked about they dig, 6 feet isn't deep, but talking about here in Houston, digging 6 feet down and finding a brick road down there. And it's just pretty mind-blowing.
This video I was watching the other day, it was in India somewhere, but they uncovered an entire city, and it was this one structure was probably 10 stories deep. And, they're claiming, modern man is claiming that this was a well that they used. Well, how do you have a well with all that water down there without going stagnant, for one? But it's just ridiculous. Some of these things they tell us or try to tell us and convince us that it's true. It's Crazy.
Yeah.
One of the things that I noticed, and this was years and years ago, and it was on our local news and everything, we would hear these big booms, right? And the ground would shake for like 50 miles, right? So for 50 miles, the earth would shake. And so local news would come on, oh, maybe it's the Seneca gun. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. There's no explanation. But all the while, they acted as if our location was the only place that's going on, right? So years later, I'm thinking about all this stuff, and I'm like, this is crazy. So I look it up, and wouldn't you know it, like so many other places, the same report is going on. Now, when you look at your local news and they do the same reporting as every other station across the country, but yet they didn't involve this thing. They didn't tell you, well, this happens everywhere, right? Why were they hiding that? Was it because of what you guys are speaking of someone being beneath us, right?
Could be.
So I've got something I wanted to mention. It's kind of not related to what we've been talking about, but want to see if something that any of you have noticed. For the last few years in Houston, they're all over town now. They started a few years ago putting them up, and it's on when you're going down the freeway, and I forget what they call them. You see the big digital signs that will tell you accident ahead or different other warnings and whatnot. Well, they're now on city roads, no longer just in the freeway. So they're spaced out in the middle of basically a neighborhood, and I'm seeing them everywhere. And I've only seen one of them activated with one message one time it was kind of close to a freeway, and it had some drive time on it. Other than that one, not one has been turned on. Like I said, it's probably been 3 years since I've started seeing them go up, and they're all over the place. And it's very eerie because I don't know specifically, but obviously this is in preparation for something. So it's like, what's coming next, where they're going to start using these digital signs that are all over the neighborhoods, all over the cities, telling you, oh, this is where your, camp is, or you're not allowed on the street right now. So and so. Have you all seen those where you are?
In my town, they have them downtown, and during the pandemic, of course, they propagated government messages like social distancing, wear a mask,
right,
stuff like that. But imagine how much money that takes to put those up all over the United States. Yeah, we still have veterans living on the streets.
Yeah, and I need to follow up on it. I made a call a couple of years ago, so to the company that's in charge of the ones on the freeway, and they said, "Oh, that's not us because we deal with the highways, the freeways." And I called up the one company that was supposed to be, and of course, you get the runaround for a little bit. But I want to know their explanation as to why they've been putting so many millions into this, and none of them functioning yet, except for that one for like a day.
I'm sure their explanation would be filled with lies.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So no matter what answer you get, it's probably not true.
What's up, Curtis? How are you, man? We can't hear you. Good try, though. Must have a big delay. We can't hear you.
That delay gets me all the time.
He's got a long delay. All right. Interesting.
Or maybe he can't hear us.
All right. Well, he is in Canada. Signal's got a long way to go, I guess.
Not for me.
Yeah. Where are you at again, Frederick?
Spokane, Washington.
Oh, yeah.
I think I'm south of your female.
He had the wrong headset on. Can you hear us? We don't hear. It's that you need to get a new mic, brother. We don't hear you.
Got to plug it in, I guess.
Hey guys, when you get a chance, look into that iridology. And,
yeah, I'm gonna.
Yeah, I've got it pulled up. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and think about the Tower of Babel. We know the languages were split, right? Now, once you get people in different areas, and they're secluded, you're going to have features. Now, would the environment play a role in the eye color, the features they're going to have? could be possible. Now, some people used to ask me, well, why are Inuit people or brown-eyed people near blue-eyed people? And I would say, well, people traveled, right? People have got on ships for thousands of years, and people were taken as slaves also. But I believe people were separated. And, if someone wanted to write a book or make a movie, we see the Ten Commandments all the time. We never see anything about the Tower of Babel, the splitting of the languages, and all of this animosity towards different ethnic groups, right? However, don't you think there would have been a lot of animosity at that point? I mean, not only toward the one who separated the languages, but towards each other, maybe blaming each other. Oh, it's their fault. They're the ones that, and this is and they would teach their children these things. There's so many scenarios and so many scripts that you could write to come up with a great movie, right? But I think the eye color, I think it may have started there, because you never see a mention of the color of the eyes in the scripture and anywhere in the scripture. And there's so much poetry. David wrote about the shape of the eyes. No one ever wrote about the color of the eyes. If David, a poet, would have seen a woman with, emerald eyes or blue eyes, he would have said so, right? In my opinion. I just haven't found it yet.
Curtis, you want to try again? He's messaging me. I think it's time for a new mic, man. We're going to have to take up the Curtis mic fund here or something.
That whole fancy setup, and I'm just using my internal.
Yep.
Come on, Curtis.
I know. I've got like 5. When I had this, I had a school. I had this martial arts school, and it was huge. It was 8,000 square feet, and I built a room, and it was my podcast room. So we would I'd have 4. You could get like 6 people there, but everyone had mics, everyone had cams on them, so I could do the editing and go back and forth. It was pretty cool. It was set up like it had the same red curtains as it looked like you were in Joe Rogan's on his podcast. I had them same dark red curtains going all the way around. It was pretty neat.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, that was cool. No luck, brother. I think your mic's done. You got to get a new one. Give it another try. He's gonna try some more stuff here. We'll but yeah, I'm gonna check that out. Anytime I'm not familiar with something, I've never seen anything, I don't write anything off, man. I always watch at least one video or something, right? Like I want to see
testing.
Yeah, we got you
hear
now.
Me now.
Yeah, that works.
Does it sound good, or is it terrible quality?
No, it sounds fine.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
All right, sick.
No
man,
problem.
it's great seeing all you guys, all fellow brothers in the faith, which is awesome. Great to be on a panel with you guys. And North, I came in one time on Witsit stream, and you guys were talking about Trinity. Man, you killed it, bro. You know the verses, the scriptures really well, I must say. So great to be here with all you guys.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, so just lots of great conversations, lots of interesting topics. There's always interesting topics to discuss when you're with a few brothers, and there's a lot of theology.
Yeah. So you just how's the move going? You relocated recently. How's all that going along?
Yeah, I'm still at my sister's there now, trying to find an apartment near to my work, because right now I'm driving 45 minutes from there to there, but that's no big deal. Till then, just chilling out here. But it will be nice to have my own space again. I must say.
Yeah. What's I'm just curious. I don't think I've ever been to Canada. I've been to the falls, right? But what's the weather like where you're at right now?
Right now it's kind of mild today. There was not much snow, but the other day we had a storm, so off and on snow, and rain and all that stuff. It's Canada's like America essentially. It's just lesser than.
Now, do you speak any French?
No, I don't. No.
Oh man, what kind of Canadian are you?
Well, we don't actually speak French at all. We speak our Canadian French, which isn't actually French from Paris at all. So, yeah, not my thing. But
Yeah.
Where are you
Yeah.
in Canada?
In London, Ontario. That's I just moved
Okay.
here about 3 months ago. Not 3 months, 3 weeks ago from Newfoundland. You ever heard of Newfoundland before?
Hmm.
Yeah. So that's like where the Titanic went down, essentially. Not saying that that's like anything about the place, my home, or anything, but yeah. Usually that's just a good marker. People know
Now
where the
Canada
Titanic went
is
down.
I'd read this a couple of years ago, and I don't remember exactly how to say it, but they're like Canada is a what is it? It's like it falls under Britain, right? Like it's a
Commonwealth
it?
country. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, something like that. Like it's essentially ruled by the monarchy, right?
Yeah.
Crown.
But I'm pretty sure the United States is as well, like because it's all part of the Vatican, and the Vatican owns everything. So
ours is just a little more hidden, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Didn't Trudeau pledge allegiance to the Queen last time he was sworn in?
Oh, of course he did. I'm sure he did. He's the the son of Fidel Castro, so he's up to all sorts of stuff. I'm sure.
He does look just like him, man. Like
I think he is. He has to be.
The odds of that are just come on, man.
Oh yeah.
And that's another thing you can't convince anybody of either if they're pro Trudeau.
No, you certainly can't. Yeah, he's like if he's a member at the Davos, at the World Economic Forum, then yeah, he's not doing anything good.
I think Trudeau is Bill Hicks.
Bill, I heard somebody is there's a theory that some guy. Oh yeah, Alex Jones.
Yeah, he is, man. He is.
I never researched into it. Is that like a legit thing, or are we just?
It's
joking
legit.
Here?
It's legit.
Okay.
Come on.
What's your source?
My house.
I don't know.
I'll bet my house.
You'll bet your house.
Hello, Eddie.
What would you put on it? Seriously, what would you bet? Would you bet your house?
I wouldn't.
Huh?
Eddie Bravo's a friend of Alex Jones.
But I rent.
Yeah, exactly. Me too.
But Curtis, like I've met him. He says that he said his 49th birthday was just in February.
Is that Trudeau you're talking about?
No, I'm sorry. Talking about Alex Jones.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he says that he's 49 as of February 11th, whatever it is.
Right.
I'll be 49 in April.
Oh, okay.
I've met him starting back in 2006 or 7 or something. Saw him a few times.
Yeah.
Talked to him on the phone and stuff, and he's never seemed like he's my age.
Right.
So that would have been, let me see, my early 30s, I guess.
Okay.
Was it? And
interesting.
No, dude. So he fits from everything physically.
Right.
Of somebody that was Bill Hicks' age.
Right. Okay.
And we talked about before. There's so many connections in addition to just physical attributes.
Right. You can lay his face right over. It's exact. One died, the other springs up. They're best friends. Alex accepts all his plaques for him after he dies. They have the same exact teeth, identical. They have the same two moles that line up exactly. They have the same. It's all the same. He's the same dude.
Well,
and the dude has a fake voice. Like nobody on earth has that voice, right? Like nobody.
Right. Yeah, true. Okay. Well, I believe in cloning and all that. Like I've looked in some interesting evidence on that one. So anything's possible. Yeah. So, and I've read Enoch, and I believe that's the scripture. So anything is possible. I'm curious. What do you guys think about Enoch? Where are you at with that?
No, I believe I've audiobooked it 5 times. I'm sold. Like I know there's a lot of people like you'll see posts now, right? Like some people say that's, you're lost, right? Like that's
right. Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. I'm curious.
Here's the thing though.
Oh yeah.
Here's the thing. If it were in our canon, they wouldn't say that. And it's in some canons, right? It's in like the Ethiopian canon, right?
Yeah.
So it was in our canon and it was removed.
That's right.
So who removed it? That's my understanding. It was the Roman Church. Like, why?
It's still in the Ethiopian Bible.
Yeah. So, yeah, for people to say, where all that came from. And there's reasons they took it out. It says right in the Book of Enoch that the whole order of the stars shall be concealed from the sinners. Right? It's just point blank. It just tells you.
Yep.
And I love the fact that it's the book for the last generation, right? For the final generation. So I'm
at
like,
the very beginning that says that. It's amazing. Oh.
Yeah,
it's epic. Yeah, and then it says like, and the fact that Enoch was taken up by God, Like there's literally no other person besides what Elisha that
There
was
was
taken
one.
up by
Yeah, I
God.
can't.
Elijah.
Yeah,
And Moses too, I think. No,
Moses. No, I don't think Moses was taken up.
I think there was just two.
I know Moses didn't
I
enter
thought
the
there was
promised
three.
land. He just
I
died.
could be
and,
wrong.
Yeah, but yeah, it's fascinating. But
yeah, Curtis, I'm a newbie still, kind of like Bobby will say for himself too, that I have a lot to learn. I have not read Enoch.
Okay, yeah,
I've heard it online. I've heard it, talked
Right.
about for years, and a lot of the verses from there.
Yep.
From everything I've seen, I would say that it should be.
So, are you a biblical cosmologist? Do you believe in true Earth?
Oh yeah.
Yep. Right on. Yeah. Well, that one also gives a lot of evidence of biblical cosmology. That's
Right.
probably another reason why it was probably taken out of the scriptures, of course. And there's actually a lot of mentioning of the coming Messiah, and and like in the scriptures from Enoch as
And
well.
there's
So
New
it's interesting.
Testament stuff in there too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it talks about, heaven and all that stuff, but also about a Messiah coming here. They don't specifically say Jesus, but
Yep.
there's
Absolutely.
many references to that.
Yeah, I I just became a Christian a year ago, so I'm really new in all of this. But it was very quickly that I first, because I was in the New Age, I came out of the New Age, and I just became thinking that to find the truth, all I had to do now, because in the New Age, it's esoteric, it's occult, it's hidden knowledge, so you had to go behind the scenes to look for it. But then I was like, oh, okay, well, the Messiah, my Savior. He's the one who saves me. Jesus is real. He's not an ascended master, like I believed in the New Age. And so I was like, oh, I just got to go to church, and then they'll tell me, what I need to know. But then I went and shopped around different churches. I wasn't getting the gospel. I wasn't getting the message of the scriptures. It was just kind of these anecdotal stories that the pastors would kind of use, but they wouldn't actually exegete scripture. It would just be eisegesis and and very, very broken down in little small boilerplate sermons. So it took online ministries to finally realize that, okay, there's I had to go back behind the scenes to find that kind of stuff. So yeah, and that's what brought me to Torah observance when I found about that. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Enoch also touches on the giant trees. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool. There's a believer, this woman that lives a couple doors down from me, and I was helping her with something yesterday, and I've told her flat earth before. We haven't gone into it, but I just put it all out there.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
And
good to hear.
I told her about the tree thing, and you could just see her light up. She was like,
oh yeah,
like
beautiful.
So I sent her the link to Hangman's channel.
Oh, you literally just brought up Hangman. Like, out of any YouTuber, you bring up Hangman, the one YouTuber that I'm actually checking out hardcore right now, looking into his videos about the gigantic trees. I've seen
awesome.
his footage, man. It's incredible. But just think about that, though. You don't know me. I don't know you. There's like a billion people that talk about these things. Like, there could be a billion different channels, and you bring up the one channel that it's hilarious. I recommend anybody here to check out Hangman.
Yes,
Because
Hangman 1128.
Yeah. His videos are incredible.
Is that one of the videos one of the real good videos I saw on that subject was called "There Are No Forests." I wonder if that's one of his or something.
I know what you're talking about, but
that was a full-on documentary kind of thing related to it. But this is a guy he just on his own. Camera work hasn't always been always great. He actually kind of called it quits because he said that, look, I've taught you everything. I've shown you it all. Now just take it and run with it.
Yeah.
And I think he started in Texas, moved to Colorado, and he'll go out with his camera and his dogs, and he just compares and he just picks up tons and tons of samples. And he says, look, this is a tree that we know is a tree. Nobody would argue. This is what we're calling a mountain. And I mean, I thought stuff like Devil's Tower being a tree stump was cool. And you realize that's small. That's nothing, man. That is tiny compared to some of these. Some of these are miles in circumference. And I had already been into that and learned a lot about it for quite a while until maybe he had brought it up or others have. But in one of the videos, he's at this one point showing this, these whatever mountain tree, coming out, and he's pointing like way across the way, saying that way over there is part of this same tree. And there's a lot of flat land in between that's been, where it's been cleared away, and it makes sense. You can see it from the shape of it and everything. I think along with the flat earth, man, that tree stuff,
it is
talk about making you just see the beauty of his earth and just understand it's like those two messages there.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
I think there were massive trees. I think there were massive giants. I believe in that.
Yep.
And we support it with all the animals, right? Oh, we had the megalodon shark. We had these massive turtles. We had these massive kangaroos. We had these massive, there's massive everything, right? But they don't want you to think there was massive humans, right? Like everything else was massive.
Exactly.
Except for humans, right? Humans are the only the only creatures on this planet that weren't massive, right?
Greg, I highly recommend check out a channel. Actually, this is how I got recommended Hangman from Stellium 7.
Yeah, I followed him for a while.
Perfect. Yeah, I came across the video there a couple of weeks back. The first one was revealing a Titan, and he basically goes in depth of this mountain that's in his backyard in Spain, and he just kind of breaks it down and compares it to the biology of or the anatomy of an elephant. And basically he says that it's a giant elephant, the mountain is, and it's just petrified. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating. It's one of those.
I kind of put up some blocks at the beginning with him because I had been misled with a lot of the mud fossil stuff that I later saw it was fake footage, and there was a lot of just misdirection within that. And
of
then
course.
when I saw his at first, I just was like, no, I'm not going to watch this. And then I went back, and then the heartstones are pretty fascinating.
Yeah, the organs, petrified organs. Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, like that kind of brings in a whole new like paradigm. I felt like I was actually going through another paradigm shift. Like the kind of the first one was flat Earth, and this one is another one. And like it's intense because when you realize that like some of those, like say for example that elephant is like a mile high, like just like to think about that. And then someone else was mentioning, and the way that like these worlds are, kind of bubbles, I guess you call them, titanology and stuff like that, like these people that go out, in their backyard and look at this stuff, it's so like nonchalant to them that they just bring up like crazy things that will just explode your mind. Like for example, one guy was like, I came across like a 500-mile like what was it, dragon, like 500 miles. Like really thinking about that, it's like, okay, so how big is the world? Like,
well, that might be the mud fossil university guy. I don't know. There's some, of course, you're always going to have people that have good intentions that are misled and spread bad information. You're going to have the intentional deceivers. But the dragon one, I haven't found anything within that. And that particular guy, Roger, I think is the one.
Yeah.
I mean, like if we look at it, we don't know how big the earth is, right? Maybe there is other land, but some of those it's just, and obviously I've considered all kinds of things,
right?
But some of these things we're talking about you're like, it's like miles. A fish in a little tiny fish bowl. Like, how much more room could you have to move around? What could you eat? You would be gone in a day.
Exactly. I know the idea that like the way Stellium 7 says is that like we're essentially the microscope, because like these things are so big that we think that like we're climbing on cliff sides and mountains and rocks, but they're just like the fingernail or like the skin fibers of a giant that's been petrified. It's like, have you seen like the rainbow colored cliff sides? Have you guys seen those? It's like kind of like a sand dune, and it has like a layered cake, like layers underneath.
Oh yeah,
they're all different colors.
I was showing those the other day. Yeah.
Yeah. The idea is like that's literally like severed parts of a giant and it's showing the very inside of the giant petrified. Like it just gets so crazy. And that's what I mean by paradigm shift, because it's literally like you're looking at things in a different way of looking at them that is just very different than most people. So you feel even more isolated than when you discover flat earth, because that's why I asked you about Enoch, because when you read Enoch, and then you understand that like there was 200 angels that fell from heaven, and then they mated with women. They produced the Nephilim, which are the giants. And, and the Bible, like it says throughout that there was giants. That's what the sons of Abraham were going around and destroying them from the promised land. So it's all connected. It's, don't want to be the conspiracy guy with the tinfoil hat, but I think I'm in the right crowd when I say everything's connected. You know what I'm saying?
Now in Enoch with the 200, wasn't there something I've learned about that they were the ones that were up in the trees, like the watchmen or something, or maybe they were the one? I'm like trying to figure out.
Don't know about the
so
trees.
If it was pre-flood that they came down, and I don't recall what I had learned or but I just had the idea passed on to me about maybe they were cut down so people couldn't climb up and escape the flood.
That's interesting. I never thought about that. Like a lot of that stuff, like there's going to be, we're not told, we're told a lot in scripture, but we're not going to obviously have like all of the understandings of all the things that happened in the past. But yeah, that's interesting. Like my theory, the idea of like the tree of life, right? Like when the tree of life was taken up with the garden, because I think personally that the tree of life was in the garden, right? With the tree of good and evil. What do you guys think about that? Have you ever thought about that one before?
I haven't given it a lot of thought. It makes sense.
Yeah. The idea.
I wouldn't doubt it.
It would make sense.
I don't know. I'd just say I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, just like the idea that because the garden essentially was where the trees, the two of the trees were, that's it would make sense kind of in the center of everything. But anyway, the idea that it was taken up. And when the garden was taken up with the two trees, basically that tree was so big, and the apocryphal books actually go into that. Jubilees, especially, that's a big one that goes into that the idea that the garden is on the earth. But when the tree was taken up, that's when essentially life became kind of like smaller because it had less oxygen that the trees produced, like those big trees. And so that was the idea that like the lifespan of man, in the genealogy of the Bible, how it's like, that people have lived so much longer, and then all of a sudden they started dying off slowly in lesser years. So yeah, that's the theory for me anyway. But I think life was a lot bigger than it was before, even before the giants. I think I think Adam personally was a lot bigger than we were without giants. It's just like everything has just kind of gotten smaller.
I've heard speculation like Adam and Noah were like 15 feet tall, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how accurate, but that's what I've heard. And I know Rob Skiba was big on the more oxygen thing, right? Like there's actually proof of it. There's actually where they've drilled into like what is it like is it emerald or something, like where they'll find like mosquitoes inside of like I can't remember what it is, but like petrified like sap that turns into like crystallizes, right?
Is that Jurassic Park?
No, this is in real life. They drill into it and they hit this air bubble and they measure the oxygen in it, and it's like way more oxygen than we have, right? Like they've been able to amber. Thank you. It's amber. No, this is real. Cool. It's real science where they've drilled. Awesome. They've done it more than once, and they've really cool. When they drilled in, they had the intent of measuring how much oxygen was in those air bubbles.
Yeah, there's so many different little things that giant trees takes you. Like you realize that all these things come from the trees.
Yeah,
the gold, like the sap.
Yeah,
and I've never been into the crystals and stones, but I had got my daughter a few months back over Christmas. I was looking for some stuff, like what else am I going to get? And I went in, just walked into the store, and they've got tons of stones and crystals and everything kind of new agey too. And this guy was showing me some stuff that I'm going to drop into my Berkey. I forget what it is, this little black stone. Anyway, and I said, hey, by the way, have you ever heard of, these giant trees? It's like, oh yeah. My wife, she's all into that. She's been telling me. So it's kind of cool being in this.
That's cool.
In this store, that's kind of this little niche thing.
Right. That's awesome.
And I thought that he was going to maybe think, hey, you're crazy, but no. And how about the giant fruits from them? Like, have you seen when they did their mainstream documentaries to try to explain away some of reality, and they talk these things that looks like an olive maybe that's, I don't know, 5 feet tall or something with a big opening, and they say that it's like big bowls or something that these people made that made no sense, right? But they explained it away, and then the people that are doing the research on the trees and stuff were like, here's the remains of a tree that has this kind of fruit. And
there you go.
So not only do you have the tree remains, or the giants, but you have remains of these giant, the fruit from these trees in some cases. And then learning more about how the petrification works and how it can work so quickly in certain instances. It's really cool. In my backyard, I would always be like, is that a tree or is that a rock? It's a piece that's maybe 3 feet long. And it was sitting there when I moved in. It looks just like a big chunk. And it almost looks like somebody took a tree and mixed some concrete with it. But now I know, like, wait, this is truly petrified.
Right.
Wood. And it's a whole new appreciation for this thing in my yard that otherwise looked like a rock. Yeah,
for sure. Well, Greg, I'm curious. You say that I caught in the stream that you're going to a church right now.
Yes,
that's awesome. What denomination, if you don't mind me asking?
It's Baptist.
Okay. So the Baptist, what's the main difference between Baptist and say Protestant or?
Well, like I started out Presbyterian, so one of the big things is that they don't, and what do you call it? The baptism is an infant, so it's baptized in the Presbyterian church.
Yeah, you guys were talking about that,
Baptist is more total submersion in the water.
So it's like small things. It's not really like, main parts of scripture that are like theologically different in terms of like.
I should know some of that better, but the main thing that I like is my church. Right. He's an expository preacher. They're not going off on anecdotal stuff. They have touched on a little bit of the worldly things, like when it came to like men and women are supposed to be together and that there's only two sexes and stuff like that. But they're not making a whole.
Biblical.
They're not going off on that, like getting all political. But it has been discussed.
Okay.
And
I wouldn't say that's more like a God's law, though, isn't it? That's not really political. I would say like if he's talking about COVID or something, that's more.
Yeah, political. But I guess in these terms of all this woke terminology, right? It's become a political discussion. I agree, and I see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And now I will say I have more to learn, but I'm on the other end than most of these flat earthers now, believing in the Trinity. And in fact, on the show you're on, I was
going to ask you that.
With Whitsitt. My friend, my very dear friend, Randy, he was the only one supporting the Trinity on that show. So it was like 1 against 8.
Oh, gotcha.
I believe he does a wonderful job. He's been
he did a really good job on his own. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
And I don't want to get too off into it, but I have to say I'm disgusted with Austin, like completely. I mean, think about just the title of his video.
Right.
He literally turns into somebody else when he talks about that. He's very, and excuse me for doing this, dogging on somebody. Maybe that's not a good thing.
Okay. That's your own opinion. That's fine.
He's extremely hypocritical. He starts to throw out ad homs like I hate his super truther.
Okay.
I don't like that thing. He starts attacking people, and he throws out fallacies left and right when it comes to that. He started conflating Christians with Catholics repeatedly. He wants it's almost like he wants everybody to believe that everybody that believes in the Trinity, he's telling everybody else that they're damned to hell if they don't believe it. Nobody at my church does that. I mean, there are just so many problems. He gets all.
Well, I don't think he said about like the idea, because actually I watched the video, and like I have followed Austin for a little bit, and the video, like the thumbnail itself is just like, I think it was like Christianity exposed.
Exposing
that's
Christianity.
What he called it. Yeah. So, and I think that, he said that it wasn't supposed to devolve into the Trinity conversation. It's just that's usually kind of like the main points where people get on when there's a bunch of Christians that have different denominational beliefs. It's usually the Trinity that's like the main thing that people talk about, because well, for me anyway, like I can only talk as my own experience, and like when I first joined the faith, that was actually the main reason why I couldn't actually join a church, because I didn't follow the Trinity. And they're like, well, you can't be a member. And I'm like, so. And it was funny because I was just listening to the pastor talking about family and how they accept everybody. And then after, he then asks if I could, if anybody wants to have a chat afterwards to come up. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do that. So I had a chat with them after, face to face. And I was like, I'm a biblical cosmologist. I'm Torah observant. You can see my tassels. I don't follow the Trinity. I was like, would that be a problem? And he's like, well, that is the core doctrine. If you don't follow the Trinity, then I'm sorry, but you can't be a member. I'm like, oh, okay, well, and he's like, but you can still come to the church, but you just, you can't get any further. And I'm like, yeah, I don't feel accepted that way, right? So that was the issue. And every time that I talk with someone about like just the love of just like the the theology of the scriptures, the New Jerusalem, what we're going to be doing in the New Jerusalem, the priesthood of Yeshua, all those beautiful things, and it's always with a Trinitarian. And I don't like calling them Trinitarians, but I just have to say that because usually that's what they just talk about. It's only about like the essence of God, of him being, created or not created. Well, of course, the Trinitarians think that he's, of course, not created because because Yeshua, they believe, is Yahuwah. And all those things, it's just unfortunately overshadows like a lot of the other stuff that we can be talking about and discussing and fellowshipping with other believers. So there's that. But I totally understand that everybody's on a different level in terms of like where they're at with understanding the Trinity. And obviously, we got to admit to ourselves, like when we're in a church for so long, like usually we are always going to end up having the same type of beliefs as the church that we've kind of fellowship with, or especially if we've been raised in that particular faith system. Most of the time, these people, end up sticking with that kind of philosophy, like with that kind of, I guess, in my personal opinion, I think it's a philosophy more than a theology. But no offense or anything. It's just a disagreement. That's all. Right?
I don't like how divisive it has been. Like
it has
caused a lot of tension on that stream too. Like, I mean, the people, even the moderators, like one guy kicked me out for like, I literally did nothing that I wasn't even arguing,
right?
And because you start to get all these fanboys, and there's no longer discussion. It's like you're wrong. Like Winsett did it many times. It's like, I don't care what you think. You see it differently. And then right after that, he would bash people and tell them they were wrong if they didn't do it.
Right.
And so I've seen it being very divisive.
Yeah.
I don't know, which is too bad. I think to have a good, open, honest discussion is good. But I'm pretty new back to the church. It's been since right after the whole lockdown stuff.
Okay.
I've grown up in the church and gone through age 18, and then after that, I called myself agnostic for many years.
Oh wow!
So
okay.
it wasn't like I was going into this having already had all these ideas. I went into the church with kind of how I was seeing it, and wanted to find a church that fit.
Yeah, of course.
How I saw it.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, that's
hey guys.
Yeah,
it's 2:16, or it's not 2:16. We put down 2 hours and 16 minutes.
It's 2:16. What?
2:16.
Where are you two, bro?
I'm looking at the numbers. So I'm looking at we're 2 hours and 16 in. I promised the wife we'd go walking tonight. So
it was great talking with all you guys.
I had a good time as always. Thanks for Curtis. Thanks for jumping in. Greg, thanks for jumping in. North, thanks for jumping in, even though you're not here anymore. Thomas, thanks for jumping in. Frederick, thanks for jumping in. Everyone that jumped in. In closing, just wanted to say it's a round table. I'm not here to force my opinion on anyone. I love hearing other people's opinions. I like listening more than I like talking. I think that's pretty evident. I just like listening to other people. I try to learn, and I try to. But yeah, man, I loved having you guys on. It was I think we had another great show, and we'll do it again. I'll send out some links. I like the people we keep bringing on. Anyone's welcome. Someone emailed me and goes, "Hey, man, how do I get on the show?" I'm like, I always drop a link. It's the whole point. Jump in. We'll take like the first 4 is kind of perfect, but I might go up to 6 sometimes. But cool. We'll do it again. All right. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you.
All right, guys.
We'll see everyone soon.
God bless. Bye-bye.
Good night.
All right. See you.